There is a death. And even if it's the death of a career, Chad Mendes is done. That means something. I will tell you, in my life, my uncle is an Olympic champion. I know a lot about sports. I've just been surrounded with it. I don't want to name drop on you guys, but my uncle was the Olympic champion. He won 2 NBA championships on top of that. It's my Uncle Mel. I see him all the time. He can tell me exactly what it takes to be great at sport. I was born into that. I go to Westland High School. We get a transfer. 1995, we get a transfer student who comes in from California. Nobody had ever met him, but we heard he was a pretty good quarterback. He ends up taking the team to the furthest place within the state championship that our high school had ever been. We ended up fourth. We got beat in the semifinals. He gets a full ride scholarship. He comes in second in the voting for the Heisman. He set every Pac-10 record and a UCL record to that date. Some of them have been broken. And was the first round in the draft. Went to the Chicago Bears. His name was Cade McNown. I can keep playing this game. I should just keep playing this game. I used to sauna in college with a guy. No athletes but wrestlers sauna. But this guy, Achilles Smith, would come in and sauna with us because he was getting drug tested. He needed to get the weed out. I don't know if a sauna gets the weed out or not, but Achilles would come and he'd get the weed out. He went in the second round of the draft. I mean, it's just everywhere I went in life, I was surrounded by the top athletes. I moved out to the Olympic Training Center. I had breakfast every morning with Dominic Mociano, who I still stay in contact with, who still gives my son tips and advice for gymnastics. I mean, I have the absolute best minds. I'm a junior in high school. I walk in the wrestling room for the first day of practice. Matt Lindland is sitting there. He was hired as an assistant coach. Matt Lindland had just won the Big Eights and was just the undefeated #1 seed at the NCAA tournament. He's now going to coach me. 17 years old. I mean, I really got lucky within sport. I've seen a lot of it. Tried to achieve certain things, but aspired and studied and watched. I share all of that with you because I have never seen a competitor as good as Chad Mendes. He's #1. Chad Mendes is everything that I ever aspired to be. When it comes to the mental toughness, the belief in yourself, and the ability, when the lights are on and the people are watching, that you are going to compete, not wilt, not find a way out, which is very normal. Every athlete does that. Every athlete wilts, and every athlete is looking for a way out. And sometimes they don't find it. Time runs out before they had time to flick it. But Chad doesn't do that. He never did it in wrestling, not once. He went over to grappling. A lot of you guys don't know this. He's an undefeated grappler. He's never been beaten. I'm not positive anybody officially gave Chad a black belt, but he also never had a competitive grappling match that wasn't against a black belt, and he beat them all. People don't know that about Chad. He's undefeated in grappling. Then he gets into MMA. He fights for 3 world championships. He walks away from MMA because he lost to the next generation of guy. He lost to an unknown guy, which represented that he just didn't have it anymore. Didn't want to be one of those guys that stuck around past his expiration date. Read the tea leaves. Lost to a kickbox. No, he lost to a rugby player out of New Zealand, some guy named Volkanovski. Very early in this unknown guy's career. Chad wrestling had a hard time taking down this rugby player that trains at a kickboxing gym, so he had to retire from the sport. And then the same thing happened here. He lost to Eddie Alvarez and he retired. It's like, what, did he? Did Chad Mendes lose to Eddie Alvarez? I mean, is that what you think? He didn't beat Eddie. I'm not saying he beat Eddie. Did he lose to Eddie? I have never rooted for a draw. You know, like you cross your fingers sometimes, like when you're a little kid, or you'll find and you're like saying a prayer real quick. I had my fingers crossed and I was doing the prayer for a draw. I've never done that in my life, never wanted a draw. Draws really convolute things. But that was how badly I didn't want somebody to be called the loser. And I didn't think that they deserved it. If you didn't see the fight, Chad put Eddie down. And Chad while in theory being smaller than Eddie, right? I wasn't at the scale to see what it, but in theory being smaller, competed in MMA at lower weights, right? At 45, Eddie went all the way up to 70. I think he did a couple at 85, as a matter of fact. Size, height, right, being on Eddie's size. In theory, Chad wasn't going to have the speed and the power, but that wasn't true. That ended up not being true. Chad puts Eddie down. Now, this was a huge deal in the fight. Huge. Eddie thought he was going to go whip this guy's ass. He really believed that. Boxing, that's what I grew up doing. I was this MMA and grappling guy. That's not what I ever planned. I ended up doing it because you guys told me that was the rule. Boxing's what I do. This is how Eddie felt. Now you're going to have me go box this little guy, this 45-pounder? So fight a 185, or you want me to go fight a 45-pounder? But this is really what Eddie thought. So when Chad put him down, I mean, this was a massive moment. I'm looking right in the eyes of Eddie Alvarez. What's he going to do? How's he going to respond? How's he going to come back? Is he going to come back? Is he going to come back for this? Well, sure enough, next round, Eddie puts him down. Boom, hit him with a right hand. Eddie put him down. Couldn't even see this so. God, Eddie's so fast. Eddie Alvarez is so fun to watch. Oh, my goodness. All right, great. We have another couple of rounds. We're in the 5th round. This thing's locked, man. I don't know who's winning this fight. This thing is locked. They've both been down once, and they've both beaten the hell out of each other. Can't tell you much more than that. 5th round, Eddie puts him down. Now, he puts Chad down with 14 seconds on the clock. So they do a 10 count, but they keep the clock keeps going. So roughly you got, what do you got? You got 8 seconds, you got 7, 9, 10. I mean, the referee's counting it, so you don't actually know. Turns them back loose. There's 4 seconds. There's 4 ticks left on the clock. Chad puts Eddie down. And I don't know with what. Watched it on replay. Do not know what he hit him with. But that speaks to the heart and the competitor of Chad. That proves my premise to this piece of what a great and stoic competitor who will never quit and goes to the bitter end. That is what that knockdown represented. Everybody in this sport that isn't named Lennox Lewis or George St. Pierre has left it the same way. Face down and embarrassed. The last thing Chad Mendes did, the last thing he did, the last thing he did is knock Eddie Alvarez on his ass. That happened. He didn't throw a jab. He didn't throw a hook. He didn't take a jab. He didn't take a hook. It is the last thing that he did. So Chad, much like everybody else, leaves in 2nd place. Eddie got him. But the last thing Chad did, the last athletic gesture and motion that he ever did, put one of the greatest fighters, 3-time world champion, on the canvas. And I think that even in defeat, Chad Mendes should be able to live proudly with that for the rest of his days.